Lando Norris stood under the Bellagio lights, clutching a second-place trophy that wouldn't exist by sunrise. 3 hours later, stewards measured a tiny strip beneath both McLaren's and found it worn beyond legal depth by 0.112 millimeters on Norris's car, less than a human hair. The penalty? Total disqualification. 40,000 spectators got a show. McLaren got a bill. That microscopic miss didn't just erase a podium. It opened a financial sinkhole, turned a title cushion into a chase, and left sponsors asking one question: if you can't keep the car legal, why should we keep the checks flowing? Here's the hinge moment. McLaren arrived in Las Vegas, with history telling them the circuit wouldn't suit their car. Cold night air, long straights, low downforce, and bumps hidden in the neon. Everything that makes a ground effect car unpredictable. So they went bold. They loaded more wing than the venue usually rewards, lowered the ride height, and banked on generating faster tire warm-up and more grip in the corners. Andrea Stella would later say the choice was aggressive, and the risk compounded by reduced practice time, a wet FP3, red flags, and no meaningful long-run data on slicks. The plan made sense in isolation. Lower the car, seal the floor, squeeze more downforce from ground effect. But there's a razor-thin line between performance and legality. Under every Formula One car sits a plank with measuring holes, 10 millimeters deep at the start, not allowed to wear below 9 by the end. That's the FIA's safeguard against teams scraping the track to chase aero gains. McLaren's cars, pushed low to find speed, began to porpoise at higher peak speeds than simulations predicted. The bouncing slammed the floor into the strip's harsh joints, and the wear rate spiked. During the race, the team tried to nurse it. Norris was told to lift and coast on the straights to reduce peak load. Telemetry showed them backing off pace by over 3 seconds at times. That wasn't fuel paranoia alone. It was a damage limitation exercise to protect the floor. But without long-run slicks data, their margin for error was measured in micrometers, and Vegas offered none. Post-race, stewards checked 4 plank holes. On Norris's car, 2 came in below the minimum. On Oscar Piastri's, 3. Intent doesn't matter here. The regulation is binary, 9 millimeters or more, or you're out. What nobody outside the garage saw at midnight were the faces on the comms line as the numbers came in. This wasn't a strategic defeat. It was a compliance failure. A car that wins on Saturday night media value is worth millions to sponsors. A car that fails the legality gauge becomes a liability. No press team can spin. McLaren argued porpoising and limited practice as mitigating circumstances. The FIA accepted there was no intent to cheat, but the verdict remained: disqualified. 2 cars wiped from the results sheet. And with that, the micrometer met the balance sheet. Meanwhile, there was a second punch, with both drivers erased. Max Verstappen's win didn't just look dominant, it became a lifeline in the title fight. Lando's lead shrank. Oscar's gap tightened. The story shifted from McLaren's dual title march to McLaren blinking under Vegas pressure. That shift matters because every narrative change carries dollars with it. Bonuses, renewals, leverage in boardrooms, where marketing executives care less about apex speeds than about consistent podium frames and sponsor mentions. Start with the cleanest number, the points. On the road, Norris finished P2 for 18 points. Piastri was P4 for 12. 30 points that should have stabilized the championship picture. Instead, the DQ turned both to 0 and gave Verstappen clear air. That swing doesn't exist in isolation. It compounds across prize money, driver bonuses, and sponsor value. Prize money first. The distribution is opaque, but historical patterns give us guardrails. A single spot in the final constructor standings often moves roughly $8–10 million, based on recent splits where 4th might sit around $113 million and 5th closer to $104 million. Now, McLaren had the constructor's title wrapped before Vegas, but the driver's title still shifts bargaining power and media weight. Take a conservative view. If those 38 points would have protected a driver's title margin and locked in narrative dominance, a one-position swing in end-of-year media valuation can shave $8 million off the practical prize and commercial pool realized next season. Vegas put that at risk. Next line item: sponsorship, activation, and ROI. Vegas is built for show. Night race, celebrity grid, podium theatrics. Partners like Google, OKX, and Eon plan their hospitality and content calendars around moments just like Norris's P2. With the DQ, expected interview segments, Podium shots and winner's circle social assets vanished. Media analytics firms often peg earned media from a top 2 finish at multi-million-dollar equivalents in broadcast time and social reach across a race weekend. A reasonable estimate? A $2-3 million shortfall in earned media value specific to Vegas. That's before you count the knock-on, a 15-20% dip in renewal leverage on deals up for 2026 discussion, because this is the clip rivals will pull out in negotiations. We need podium reliability, not micrometer heartbreak, operations, and logistics. The disqualification doesn't end when the press release drops at 1:42 a.m. FIA procedures, data dives, simulator reruns, and expedited freight for Qatar to tweak torsion bar stiffness or small aero parts. It all adds hours and invoices. 12+ hours of dual-site staff time between Las Vegas and Woking, senior engineers on overtime and late freight can push toward $500,000 in non-capped costs. Under the $135 million cost cap, some categories sit outside or are treated differently. But the reality is simple. Unplanned firefighting pulls funds and focus from development that was supposed to win the next weekend. Bonuses. Performance clauses are the quiet line items fans forget. Driver contracts commonly include 6-figure payouts for top 5 finishes. You wipe a P2 and a P4. You wipe roughly $300,000 in driver bonuses. Then add team incentives, mechanics and engineers tied to points thresholds, and end-of-season pools. If a standard scheme shares out around 5% of the prize component as bonuses, that's another $200,000 to $400,000 deferred or diluted depending on where the team finishes and what goals remain reachable. People don't feel narrative shifts, they feel bonuses vanish. Add those invisible bills and you see where the $8-12 million Vegas tab comes from. 5O's $8 million risk on final standings, leverage, $2-3 million in lost earned media, and 5O's $1 million in ops overrun, plus the bonus roll-off. And that's conservative. If the Drivers' Championship tightens to the final weekend because Vegas shifted the math, the revenue drag stretches into hospitality demand, merchandise sell-through, and global partner activations that were banking on a coronation storyline. Here's where the micro meets macro. ESPN reported the wear on Norris's plank was just 0.112 millimeters beyond the limit, a human hair's width. Yet the title picture swung, and the sponsor mood cooled. Racing News 365's technical breakdown pointed to porpoising, low ride height, and the absence of slicks long runs as the root. Formula1.com's steward summary underlined it. Rear skids below 9 millimeters measured twice and confirmed. McLaren apologized to the drivers and the FIA acknowledged there was no intent to cheat. None of that changes the invoice total because compliance is binary. The money doesn't care if the breach was accidental. There's a second order effect too. Negotiation posture. When you're this close to delivering a driver's title and your brand partners are ready to amplify it, a headline weekend like Vegas should cement your rate card for the next cycle. Instead, McLaren left with a cautionary tale. Prospective partners don't need perfection, they need predictability. Episodes like this give procurement departments something to press on. What's your mitigation plan for street circuits at low temperatures? How will you guarantee legal ride height without sacrificing qualifying pace? Every answer has a cost, and every guarantee narrows flexibility elsewhere. Finally, the competitive ledger. Verstappen, who looked on the brink of elimination from the title race if both McLaren stood, got a lifeline that forces McLaren to spend focused capital and simulation cycles shoring up compliance and porpoising models, not chasing performance upsides. In a cost-capped world, every hour you spend preventing a Vegas repeat is an hour you don't spend finding 2 tenths for Qatar or Abu Dhabi. That's not just an engineering trade, it's an economic one, because performance upside multiplies sponsor confidence, while compliance work merely prevents losses. So the bill isn't a single line item, it's a stack. Points gone, podium images erased, overtime accrued, bonuses evaporated, leverage diluted, and strategic attention redirected. All triggered by a setup gamble that made sense on paper and failed under a micrometer. Less than a hair's width and millions moved. Vegas punishes optimism. McLaren knew that. They'd spent 2 years learning it the hard way. In 2024, with a car that bullied most circuits, they left the strip with 6th and 7th. A year earlier, Norris ended his night in the wall. After a bump caught the rear mid-corner, repairs and points gone. The pattern wasn't speed, it was fragility under cold, bumpy, low-drag conditions. And still, under the neon, they tried to will the track into being something it never is. Now set that against teams who treated Vegas like a compliance exam. Red Bull didn't top every session, but Verstappen's 2025 race was clean. Controlled stint lengths, stable ride heights, no porpoising spike in the night air, no plank drama. That's not only engineering, it's risk pricing. You sacrifice a touch of quali peak to guarantee legal wear over 50 laps. Mercedes wrote the same lesson into the book in 2024. Russell's pull and Hamilton's charge to a 1-2 weren't built on exotic edges. They were built on a car trimmed for efficiency and legality in cold air. Conservative wings, predictable tire windows, and floor control. Homework over hubris. Here's where the money shows up. Vegas as showbiz sponsor suites. Partner dinners, cameras everywhere. If you're Red Bull, a clinical Verstappen win brings full value deliverables. Podium branding, long-form post-race hits, stable renewal leverage. If you're Mercedes in 2024, the strip becomes a case study you sell to partners. We read the environment right. McLaren, by contrast, gave buyers a negotiation clip. It's not that speed vanished, it's that predictability did. The DQ didn't just hand Verstappen 25 points and a title lifeline, it handed rival commercial teams a talking point that dents McLaren's price power. Look wider at street comps. Monaco punishes mistakes, but at slow speeds. Plank wear isn't the boogeyman. Singapore's humidity and bumps test cooling and traction. Yet teams can play with ride height because the straights don't load the floor as violently. Vegas is the outlier. Long pin straights dumping massive vertical load into cold asphalt with joints that act like chisels. It rewards those who assume their sims are wrong and build buffers. The irony? McLaren's 2025 Podium everywhere else said swing big. Vegas demanded pass the test. They swung and the micrometer graded them. Then there's internal deja vu. McLaren's 2023 crash bill, their 2024 underperformance, and the 2025 DQ all orbit the same nucleus. Street circuit volatility under cold lights. The comp that stings is how little Red Bull and Mercedes gave away on the same night. It frames the financial narrative cleanly. 3 approaches, 3 outcomes. Calculated margin wins sponsors. Maximum attack without buffers loses rate card leverage. The strip didn't change, the homework did. You fix Vegas 2 ways. PR triage now, model discipline later. The triage is immediate. Quiet calls to Google, OKX, Neom, explain the DQ, share action items, offer make goods, exclusive data debriefs, talent access in Qatar, bonus content drops that reclaim some of the lost impressions. You front foot the story, unintentional breach confirmed by the FIA, root cause isolated, controls in place. That tone doesn't win points back, but it keeps renewals warm. Prevention costs real money. Dedicated street circuit correlation programs aren't free. Extra 7-post rig time, more floor wear rigs, a winter session of instrument and mule runs on representative surfaces, and software work to bound porpoising with hard ride height guardrails. You add heavier duty rear skids for Vegas only, accept a quali hit, and invest in a Vegas pack. Stiffer torsion bars, thicker plank margins, and predefined lift and coast deltas if wear hits thresholds. Budget at mid-6 figures in sim and test time, another few $100,000 in bespoke parts and logistics, plus the opportunity cost. Engineers pulled from chasing lap time. But compare that to the Vegas tab we just tallied. The prevention is cheaper, the internal policy shift matters most. Codify a compliance-first decision tree for cold street nights. If long-run slicks data is missing, default to legality buffers. If porpoising amplitude exceeds modeled bounds by X% in FP2, raise the car Y millimeters, non-negotiable. You accept the pain on Saturday to ensure Sunday. That's dull. It's also profitable. 1/10 of a millimeter cost McLaren far more than 1/10 on track. It taxed their balance sheet, their leverage, and their story. If you want more of these hard business truths from Motorsport's Frontline, hit subscribe and watch our deep dive on how one compliance clause reshaped a title fight. Next up, the hidden cost of upgrade culture and why some teams should stop bringing parts